This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Mali's coup leaders face widespread condemnation as regional body ECOWAS starts talks on the crisis. South Sudan Army halts disarmament in the northern part of the country. And we'll look at how the continent is coping with the coronavirus pandemic in our series, Africa Under COVID-19. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories that we can look forward to. Later on in the show, delegates in the China-Africa Forum 2020 discuss possibilities of collaboration in the post-coronavirus pandemic era. We begin in Mali, where Army Colonel Assimi Goïta has presented himself as head of the junta that ousted Mali's president. Junta members met government ministry officials late on Wednesday to map out a return to stability, a day after detaining President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta in a coup. Keïta resigned and dissolved parliament after mutineers detained him at gunpoint. According to media reports, West African presidents now plan to fly to Mali in an effort to block a coup-driven regime change.
As you know, Mali finds itself in a socio-political and security crisis, and we are not allowed to make any more mistakes. By intervening as we did, we have raised the country above.
Earlier, we spoke with African Affairs analyst Achike Chude for more insight into the current situation in Mali. He touched on whether ECOWAS's sanctions could pressure Mali's military leaders.
The sanctions will hit the Malian people very, very hard. And so they have no choice but also to negotiate again how to maneuver the situation. So it's not going to be easy for them. I see there must be some level of compromises that they have to make, because they are not in a position exactly to determine, 100% what is going to happen with Mali, both now and in the future. And they do not also forget the fact that there's been so much investment in trying to stem the tide of the instability in Mali. About $1.2 billion is being spent to maintain 15,000 troops that are in Mali. The French government has also been spending so much, and then ECOWAS countries have been doing the same. So to accept failure by allowing the present situation to remain as it is something that I think is very unwholesome and unpalatable, to the ECOWAS members. So I think they are going to ratchet up the pressure. They are going to make it very clear. Of course, you can see not just regional bodies or international bodies, but countries have also risen in condemnation. And I think that the junta and the opposition will begin to feel a lot of pressure.
In the meantime, the African Union has suspended Mali from the continental bloc following Tuesday's military coup. The AU's Peace and Security Council held an emergency meeting and resolved that Mali would only be allowed to rejoin the AU after it had returned to constitutional rule. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa, where the AU is headquartered.
According to the African Union, Mali cannot participate in activities of the continental bloc until constitutional order resumes and power is given back to civilians. The AU insists that Mali is a sovereign state and the transition of power must be done through elections, not coups. It has asked the Malian defense and security forces to unconditionally return to their barracks and refrain from interfering in the country's political processes. The AU is also demanding for the unconditional release of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta and his Prime Minister. It is also calling on the political actors in Mali to resort to dialogue and reconciliation to resolve the current standoff. It hopes that they will agree to implement the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement they signed in 2015, but which has so far not been respected. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Over in East Africa, South Sudan's army says it has halted disarmament in the northern part of the country where it clashed with armed civilians. The confrontation left 150 people dead. South Sudan's People's Defense Force, however, says it's continuing disarming civilians in other parts of the country. The government launched the exercise in a bid to stop intercommunal violence. CGTN's Patrick Oyet spoke to Defense Force spokesperson Major General Lul Kwang.
The civilians do not use guns for productive purposes. They use them for killing themselves. They also use them for killing security forces. So it is very important for these guns to be removed from the hands of civilians who are not authorized to carry them.
What are the reasons as to why many civilians have guns?
Civilians acquired guns for a number of reasons, primarily to defend themselves against insecurity. Secondly, it has become part of their livelihoods. They use guns also for hunting. It's also meant for social prestige, for marrying, paid for dowry. And then the other one is that during the wars, the government in the north also armed counter-insurgency movements, and as a result, civilians ended up getting guns in many ways, through many means.
The disarmament exercise that started, of course, started well, but we've seen clashes in some parts of the country, like in Warab State. How is the situation now?
The situation, law and order, was restored immediately. Civilians who had fled their homes were urged to return home. We took a number of steps to arrest the situation. First and foremost, we had arrested 2 soldiers that were involved in the initial disagreement. That was in the evening of 8th. We had appealed to the traditional leaders for them to identify 3 civilians that attacked our defensive position. An investigation is going to be sent to the area, high-level investigation committee, to find out exactly what had happened. The disarmament had been going on very well, with civilians being told to hand over their guns peacefully. We were calling it peaceful disarmament or voluntary disarmament, with the chiefs taking the lead. And as a result of that, we felt that the process will resume. We had put it on hold so that the dead could be buried. Some rituals are performed. The disarmament force that was involved in the fight is reorganized and given a new orientation. Then once we are done with that within the next few days, and then it will resume.
How important is disarmament for South Sudan now, and how serious is the problem of guns in the hands of the civilians?
The army is getting reunified. There is political agreement that had brought the leaders together. Now that all these arrangements are in place, then the National Army, that's the SPDF, will provide you security, and therefore there would be no reason for you to continue keeping guns.
The coronavirus pandemic has affected many industries in Africa. Businesses across sectors have been challenged with adapting to a new normal. In our continuing Africa Under COVID series, we take a closer look at how various ventures are navigating the effects of the pandemic. We begin this segment in Kenya, where the flower industry there is slowly picking up after a tough start to the year. This is largely due to the easing of restrictions in Europe that has seen markets opening up. CGTN's Nick Mudumba visited Kenya's flower capital of Naivasha, and here's what he found.
2020, a year many would want to forget, especially those in the flower industry. Gradually, though, things are beginning to turn rosy. We visit Nini Flowers in Naivasha, Kenya, a leading exporter to many parts of the world. Here, it's business unusual and stability slowly being achieved after a difficult season. Workers are getting back to work, from harvesters to the packaging personnel, all are ready for another, hopefully, brighter season.
It has been difficult, especially the month of March and April were very, very difficult for us. It was just coming at the heel of the biggest sale we usually have, which is Valentine's. We do almost half of our sales during Valentine's, and we were just coming out of that. That means that we were still selling. And then suddenly we have a drop in the sales because we lacked demand.
Cultivating high-quality flowers for the world market requires enormous resources and time. This farm has employed more workers. They are eager and determined to put the past behind them. It's been a tough season for flower farmers here in Kenya. At some point, they were harvesting for dumping, but right now the workers are slowly gaining the confidence in their employers with the fact that also they're getting back to work as usual. Now, there's something special about these farms is that they can't really waste a day without harvesting. Sometimes even harvesting comes after hours, meaning that they have to be at work all the times. It was so catastrophic that they were harvesting for dumping. The Kenya Flower Council wants freight services between Kenya and global markets to be increased. The produce is now at 80%, and if more cargo flights are increased and freight charges lowered, then the industry will be on the path to recovery. The floriculture sector was losing $30,000 a day 3 months ago.
And government has pledged to plug in 1.5 billion Kenya shillings into this to help us. We hope that it will come soon. We have lobbied around VAT, our VAT refunds, and at some point, a few months ago, they released about 60% of the VAT refunds, and that has helped a bit to cushion the growers on the liquidity side so that we continue operating.
It's full house in most of the departments at this farm, and operations are almost back to optimum levels.
We cannot survive without them. They are very important. We will try to keep 100% of our permanent workers as possible. As the market opens up and production goes up, then we are committed to admitting everyone back onto their jobs.
They say in every town there's a signal of a flower. It's been a rough patch for most of the flower workers here in Kenya. And right now they're all smiles because they can go home knowing tomorrow they have somewhere to go to. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Naivasha, Kenya.
Well, let's move up north now to Egypt, where 25-year-old Mohammed El Kholi has scooped a United Nations award for fighting misinformation on COVID-19. The graduate in medicine is using digital platforms to create awareness, especially among the youth. Our correspondent Adel Al-Marouhi caught up with him in Cairo.
مستمعينا الكرام، أهلا ومرحبا بكم في الحلقة الأولى من برنامج بير كاست، البرنامج اللي بيقدم من خلال شبكة الأقران للشباب مصر واي بير ايجيبت. هكون معاكم أنا محمد الخولي في بودكاست من الشباب إلى الشباب. النهاردة هي انطلاقة
Mohammed El Kholi is a man on a mission. He keeps close tabs on social media and follows the flow of information around COVID-19. He pounces on the slightest bit of misinformation, swiftly offering up the facts. El Kholi is part of an international youth network known as Y-Peer.
The concept of Y-Peer is to enlighten your peers, to raise awareness among them. Peers are my friends, colleagues at work, neighbors and family members. This way, ideas and information can spread fast and we can learn a lot.
El Kholi is a medical school graduate, but he doesn't practice as a doctor. Instead, his work revolves around public health. When COVID-19 struck in Egypt, he chose to focus on awareness. Initially, he concentrated on videos, but they failed to appeal to younger viewers, so he switched to podcasts.
We wanted the content to be appealing, so we decided to do a Q&A. The episode asks questions about commonly known misinformation, and a professional clarifies the truth, whether it's from the WHO or Ministry of Health. Audio content had great impact. Whenever you are on the move, audio is more practical. It's not easy when you drive or walk.
Each episode features an expert from the World Health Organization or the Egyptian Health Ministry. And to maintain social distancing, all his episodes have been produced remotely.
The UN has featured our story on its website as one of the most significant projects in the world facing COVID-19 misinformation. This was a great push. We started domestically, then regionally through the UN country office. Now it's becoming a global move.
وتم العمل عليها في فترة الكوفيد في مصر.
YPeer has some 40,000 volunteers and 300 NGOs supporting its initiatives. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
It's time now for us to take a short break and we return. More news.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You got to get out, go there, and you find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, South Africa is playing a key role in the global search for a COVID-19 vaccine. 1,600 volunteers have already signed up for the first trial of a vaccine that is a non-replicating version of a common cold virus. It was developed in the UK and is being tested in England, Brazil, and South Africa. CGTN's Julie Shire brings us that report.
Volunteers for South Africa's first COVID-19 vaccine trial braved the cold and windy conditions in Soweto for the regular checkup at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital.
I think I'm lucky because I'm from the research world, so in many ways I knew that how safe the vaccine was. I wasn't particularly worried about it. I've had 2 doses now. The first one felt like somebody had punched my arm, and then that night I was very cold and shivery for about 10 minutes, and the night after. And the second time, as the vaccine went in, it was burning quite a lot.
This is one of the first vaccine trials in Africa that's been run simultaneously in a high-income country, and I think the significance of that for our population is huge. What it means is the vaccine, access to the vaccine will be accelerated, it will be much quicker, and I think it's essential.
The Wits University trial is the first on the continent and part of a global study also being conducted in the UK and Brazil.
After we've completed the enrollment of 2,000 participants, we need to then continue following them up until roughly about 42 of them develop COVID-19, at least 2 weeks after they've received a second dose of vaccine. Once that has happened, then we would be able to do an analysis to see whether a vaccine actually protects against COVID-19 or not.
South Africa is close to its peak with well over 500,000 cases. There's a marked 80% recovery rate, but thousands have already died.
We're trying to help the country so that we can limit the spread of the coronavirus and get the vaccine. I wanted to get more information about the COVID-19 and I also wanted to get my results and know whether if I'm negative or positive, and also know what are the precautions on how to prevent the COVID-19 from spreading.
Out here, numbers are surging, but inside one of South Africa's biggest hospitals, scientists are hard at work trying to find a solution for COVID-19.
So the reality is that even if this vaccine is shown to work, there's not going to be enough supply of the vaccine in the immediate future. There's no company in the world that is going to be able to produce billions of doses of vaccine over a short period of time. So what will likely need to occur is basically some sort of prioritization in terms of who should be vaccinated, not just in South Africa, but globally.
Wits University is set to begin a second trial on a new vaccine from the US. Health workers and the vulnerable are likely to be the first in line if any of the treatments prove effective. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
We now go to the Horn of Africa in Somalia, where a bill to legalize child marriage has been tabled before Parliament. The Deputy Speaker of Somalia's Parliament, who proposed the bill, has argued that it is based on Islam. However, a group of legal professionals, activists, and citizens are opposing the proposed legislation. CGTN's Wanja Mungai tells us more.
Hafsa Ali Osman is a victim of child marriage. Her father married her off at 13. Her bride price, $100.
There were reasons why my parents told me to accept the marriage and follow the man. And I said, okay, as you see, we have nothing. So I said, okay, father, I will do as you ask. So I married him.
This trend is common in Somalia. According to a government report, a third of Somali girls get married before the age of 18.
This bill, which will be applied in this country, which will affect the most vulnerable and the most poor, right? And the men and women who are passing this bill, rest assured, if anything happens, they will not be subjected to this bill, right? Some of the people who are working on this, their children live in a safe country where the rights of their children are protected.
Deputy Speaker Abdiweli Mudei defends the bill, saying it's in line with Islamic teaching. Early child marriage has already led to immense suffering among young girls.
My husband will go out to search for some food, and then he will return home empty-handed and beat me, demanding why I hadn't prepared lunch for him, but I had nothing to cook.
It is not certain if the bill will pass. If it does, the lives of young girls like Hafsa will be at risk. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
We move to Tanzania, where construction has begun on its controversial $3 billion Rufiji hydropower plant. Once complete, the facility will have installed generation capacity of 2.1 gigawatts. The dam is being built in a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is home to many threatened species. CGTN's Daniel Kija has the details.
East Africa's biggest energy project is looking to make a bang. The 2,115 megawatt Julius Nyerere hydropower station will be the fourth biggest dam in Africa and ninth in the world. It was a vision that was first pushed forward by Julius Nyerere, Tanzania's founding father. Construction has begun, and the plan should be finished within 2 years, paid by the government.
Up to now, the government has fully paid $560 million. The money's there. Whenever the contracts need to be paid, the government pays. And this is money collected from Tanzanians.
The government says this is the biggest energy project the country has ever undertaken. Upon completion, it's expected to double electricity generation. With this project, Tanzania should join only a few other African countries that have electricity in both rural and urban areas. And the government says that this increased power supply is not just about domestic use, but could push economic growth too. The power project is being constructed by a joint venture of Egyptian companies, Arab contractors, and El Swedi Electric Co. It has employed hundreds, and 80% of the staff are local.
Up to now, there are 3,897 employees at the site. They're working hard. Our goal is to get to 6,000 workers.
Environmentalists at UNESCO have raised concerns about the insufficient strategic environmental assessments of the hydropower project, but the government maintains the impacts will be minimal. Historically, 45% of the power sector of Tanzania has been generated through hydropower, but this plant was first dreamed of more than 50 years ago. And now, and just after half a century later, it may, at last, be about to bring power to millions of people's homes. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Let's go to a break now, but here's what you can expect when we return. Delegates at the China-Africa Forum 2020 discuss possibilities of collaboration in the post-coronavirus pandemic era.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.